The morning sun streamed through the windows of Andre Wilson's penthouse apartment as he packed his carry-on bag for his flight to San Francisco. Despite being worth over $3 billion, Andre still packed his own bags. He believed small actions, like these, kept him grounded in a world where money could easily disconnect people from reality. Andre glanced at his watch, a simple Timex, rather than the Rolex his business partners had gifted him last Christmas. He had 2 hours before his flight. Plenty of time to get to the airport, even with New York traffic. At 42, Andre had built Tech Fusion from nothing into one of the most innovative tech companies in America. Growing up in a tough neighborhood in Detroit, computers had been his escape. While his friends played basketball after school, Andre spent hours in the public library teaching himself coding on outdated machines. His grandmother's basement became his first office, where he developed an app that helped small businesses manage their finances. That app now served millions of users worldwide. "Your car is downstairs, Mr. Wilson," his assistant David texted. Andre grabbed his luggage and headed to the elevator. He wore dark blue jeans, a simple black button-up shirt, and comfortable sneakers. He could easily afford designer clothes but preferred comfort over luxury, especially when traveling. In the lobby, the doorman smiled broadly. "Have a good trip, Mr. Wilson. My daughter started that coding program you funded at her school. She loves it." Andre's face lit up. "That's great to hear, Tom. Tell her to stick with it. The world needs more women in tech." The driver took Andre's bag and opened the car door. Unlike many wealthy people, Andre always made conversation with service workers. He remembered their names and asked about their families. His grandmother had worked as a hotel maid for 30 years, and he never forgot how people had treated her as if she were invisible. "How's your son doing with his college applications, Michael?" Andre asked the driver. Michael beamed. "He got accepted to 3 schools. Still waiting to hear from his top choice, though." "That's fantastic. Remember, my offer to help with tuition still stands." "I appreciate that, sir. Truly." As they drove through Manhattan, Andre reviewed his presentation notes on his tablet. The conference in San Francisco was gathering the biggest names in technology to discuss the future of artificial intelligence. Andre's company had recently developed an AI program that could help diagnose diseases in areas with limited access to healthcare. He wasn't just going to talk about innovation, he was going to demonstrate how technology could help solve real problems. The car pulled up to the airport, and Andre thanked Michael before heading inside. He wore no flashy jewelry, carried no designer luggage, nothing that screamed billionaire. His wealth was visible in his public works, the technology centers he built in underserved communities, the scholarships he funded, the small businesses he helped grow, not in his appearance. Inside the terminal, Andre joined the security line like everyone else. He could have arranged for VIP treatment but preferred not to. These small moments of normalcy kept him connected to the real world in ways that many of his wealthy peers had lost. A young woman behind him in line was struggling with her toddler and luggage. Andre offered to hold the child while she organized her things. "Thank you so much," she said, clearly relieved. "Flying alone with a 2-year-old is harder than I expected." Andre smiled as the little boy tugged at his beard. "No problem at all. I have nephews about his age. They're handful at this stage." When they reached the front of the line, the security agent did a double take when he scanned Andre's passport. The man's eyes widened slightly, but Andre shook his head almost imperceptibly. He appreciated being treated like any other passenger. After clearing security, Andre stopped to buy a bottle of water and a magazine. The cashier didn't look up from her phone as she rang him up. It always amused him how many people had no idea who he was. His picture occasionally appeared in business magazines and news stories about tech innovation, but he wasn't a celebrity. He preferred it that way. At the gate, Andre sat among the other waiting passengers. He pulled out his phone to check his emails when a news alert popped up. Tech Fusion stock rises 5% ahead of Wilson's AI conference appearance. Andre smiled to himself. The company's success still surprised him sometimes. Just 12 years ago, he was working out of a tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles and hoping his credit card wouldn't get declined. Now he employed over 5,000 people worldwide. His phone rang. It was his grandmother. "Hey, Nana," he answered warmly. "Are you at the airport yet?" Her voice was strong despite her 87 years. "Yes, ma'am. Waiting to board now." "Did you pack your vitamins?" You know how you catch colds on those airplanes with all that recirculated air? Andre laughed. Yes, I packed them. How are you feeling today? Did the new medication help with your arthritis? They chatted for a few minutes. No matter how busy he was, Andre always had time for the woman who had raised him after his parents died. He had bought her a beautiful house, but she still lived in the same neighborhood where she'd spent most of her life. My friends are here, she always said. Why would I leave them? The gate agent announced that first-class boarding would begin shortly. Andre finished his call, promising to check in when he landed. As he waited for his boarding group, he noticed a young man staring at his tablet with frustration. The young man wore a worn suit that seemed slightly too big for him. Technology problems? Andre asked. The young man looked up, embarrassed. Yeah, I have a job interview in San Francisco tomorrow, and I was trying to review my portfolio, but my tablet keeps crashing. Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with tech. The young man handed over his tablet. That would be great. I'm Ben, by the way. Andre, nice to meet you. He examined the tablet, quickly finding the issue. You've got too many background apps running. Let me close some of them and clear your cache. As Andre fixed the problem, Ben studied him. You seem really familiar. Have we met before? Andre handed the tablet back. I don't think so. There you go, should work much better now. Thanks so much. This portfolio is everything for this interview. What kind of work do you do? Andre asked. Graphic design. This would be my first big job if I get it. I've been freelancing since college. Andre nodded. Everyone starts somewhere. I began my business in my grandmother's basement. He pulled out a business card, simple, with just his name and email. If things don't work out with this interview, send me your portfolio. We're always looking for good designers. Ben's eyes widened as he read the card. You're the Andre Wilson? From Tech Fusion? Andre smiled modestly. That's me. I can't believe it. Your company's design work is what inspired me to go into this field. Before Andre could respond, the gate agent announced first-class boarding. He shook Ben's hand. Good luck with your interview. I mean it about sending me your portfolio either way. As Andre lined up to board, he felt someone watching him. A few passengers had noticed the exchange and were whispering to each other, pointing discreetly in his direction. He was used to this and simply gave a polite nod. The flight attendant at the gate scanned his boarding pass. Have a pleasant flight, Mr. Wilson, she said with a smile that seemed genuine rather than professional. Andre walked down the jetway, thinking about the conference ahead. He hoped his presentation would inspire other companies to focus on using technology to solve real-world problems rather than just chasing profits. On board, Andre stored his carry-on and settled into his first-class seat. He chose a window seat so he could watch the clouds during takeoff. Despite flying hundreds of thousands of miles each year for business, he still found something magical about soaring above the earth. Other first-class passengers boarded, most in expensive suits or designer outfits. A few nodded at him in recognition. One man, wearing what appeared to be a custom-made suit and a watch worth more than some cars, did a double-take upon seeing Andre in his casual clothes. Andre pulled out his tablet again, reviewing his presentation one last time. His company's AI healthcare program had already been tested in several rural clinics with promising results. If more companies invested in similar projects, they could transform healthcare access globally. As the economy passengers began boarding, Andre watched them pass through to the back of the plane. Every person had their own story, their own struggles and triumphs. He never forgot that he was just one story among millions, and that his success came not just from his hard work, but also from opportunities others never received. The flight attendants began their pre-flight preparations. Andre put his tablet away and fastened his seatbelt, unaware that this routine flight was about to become anything but ordinary. The plane finished boarding, and Andre settled comfortably into his first-class seat. He placed his phone in airplane mode and pulled out a book, an autobiography of a former president he'd been meaning to read for months. Business trips were often his only chance to catch up on reading. A flight attendant with a name tag reading Patricia walked through the first-class cabin, offering pre-takeoff drinks. She smiled warmly at each passenger, taking orders with practiced efficiency. Would you like anything to drink before takeoff? Patricia asked the older gentleman in an expensive suit across the aisle from Andre. Scotch, neat. Do you have Macallan? the man asked without looking up from his newspaper. Yes, sir, we do, Patricia replied. Pouring his drink with a flourish, she continued down the aisle, attending to each passenger with the same attentive service. When she reached Andre, her smile faltered slightly. Water is on the seat pocket in front of you, she said curtly, moving to walk past him. Andre looked up from his book, slightly surprised by the abrupt interaction. Excuse me, could I get an orange juice, please? Patricia glanced back with a tight-lipped expression. I'll be back with that, she said, and continued down the aisle, taking drink orders from the remaining first-class passengers. 10 minutes passed, and Patricia returned with a tray of drinks for everyone, except Andre. She distributed the beverages, chatting pleasantly with the other passengers. When she finished, she turned to head back to the galley without acknowledging Andre. Excuse me, Andre called politely. I'm still waiting for that orange juice. Patricia turned with a slight frown. We're preparing for takeoff now. You'll have to wait until we're in the air. Andre noticed that she had just handed the businessman across the aisle a fresh scotch. He said nothing, simply nodding and returning to his book. The plane taxied and took off, climbing steadily into the clouds. Andre gazed out the window, watching as New York City became a miniature model below. Despite the minor interaction with the flight attendant, his mood remained positive. He was used to occasional slights. They were unfortunate reminders of biases that still existed, even in 2025. About 30 minutes into the flight, Patricia and another flight attendant named Thomas began the in-flight service. Thomas was tall with a friendly demeanor, offering each passenger a warm smile as he took their lunch orders. Patricia handled the drink service, refreshing beverages with professional efficiency for most passengers. When Thomas reached Andre, he smiled. What can I get you for lunch today, sir? We have a herb-crusted chicken or beef tenderloin. The chicken sounds great, thank you, Andre replied. And would you like anything to drink with that? Thomas asked. I'm still waiting for that orange juice, actually, Andre said with a light-hearted chuckle. Thomas looked confused. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me get that for you right away. As Thomas moved on, Patricia approached with a drink cart. She served the businessman across the aisle a fresh scotch and engaged in friendly conversation about his business trip to San Francisco. She asked about his company and commented on his impressive titanium watch. When she reached Andre, she placed a small plastic cup of orange juice on his tray without a word and immediately turned to the passenger behind him. Andre sipped his juice quietly, observing the stark difference in service. It wasn't the first time he'd experienced such treatment, and he doubted it would be the last. Success had changed many things in his life, but some people's perceptions remained stubbornly fixed. The meal service began, and Thomas delivered Andre's chicken with a friendly smile. Here you are, sir. Can I get you anything else? This looks great, thank you, Andre replied. Halfway through his meal, Andre realized he didn't have any utensils. He looked around and saw that every other passenger in first class was eating with proper silverware. His tray had only the wrapped chicken dish and his small cup of juice. Andre pressed the call button. Minutes passed with no response. He pressed it again. Finally, Patricia appeared with an exasperated expression. Yes? She asked, her tone making it clear she was annoyed by the interruption. I don't seem to have any utensils, Andre explained calmly. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. Didn't we give you some? Everyone else has them. No, I'm afraid not, Andre replied, maintaining his composure. Fine, wait here, she said, as if Andre had anywhere to go on the plane. Several more minutes passed before Patricia returned and practically tossed a plastic-wrapped set of economy-class utensils onto his tray. Andre noticed that everyone else in first class was using proper metal silverware. Is there a problem? Patricia asked when she caught Andre looking at the plastic utensils. No problem at all, he replied with a polite smile. Thank you. Andre unwrapped the flimsy plastic fork and knife and continued his meal. A businessman 2 rows ahead turned and gave him a curious glance, clearly noticing the discrepancy in service. After finishing his meal, Andre decided to work on his presentation. He removed his laptop from his bag and set it up on the tray table. When Thomas came to collect the meal trays, he smiled at Andre. How was the chicken, sir? Excellent, thank you, Andre replied. I'll be back with coffee and dessert shortly, Thomas assured him. Patricia, meanwhile, continued her attentive service to the other first-class passengers. She leaned in to chat with an elderly woman about her grandchildren, brought extra pillows to a middle-aged couple without being asked, and made sure the businessmen across the aisle never had an empty glass. An hour into the flight, Andre needed to use the restroom. He waited patiently as Patricia finished serving coffee to the row ahead of him, then stood to excuse himself. As he stepped into the aisle, Patricia blocked his path with the beverage cart. "You need to stay seated while I'm serving," she said firmly. "I just need to use the restroom quickly," Andre explained. Patricia sighed dramatically. "You'll have to use the economy restroom in the back. The first-class one is being cleaned." Andre glanced toward the front of the plane and saw another first-class passenger emerging from the supposedly being cleaned restroom. Rather than cause a scene, he simply nodded and made his way to the back of the plane. As he walked through the economy section, several passengers looked up with surprise, recognizing his face from recent tech news coverage. A young woman nudged her seatmate and whispered something as he passed. When Andre returned to first class, he found Patricia leaning over his seat, moving his laptop and papers aside as she placed a coffee cup at the window seat for the passenger next to him. "Excuse me," Andre said. "I was working on those." Patricia straightened up with a frosty expression. "I was just serving coffee to this gentleman. Your things were in the way." The passenger next to Andre, who had been sleeping most of the flight, looked uncomfortable with the tension. "Thank you for the coffee," the man said to Patricia, then turned to Andre. "Sorry about your papers." Andre smiled at him. "No problem at all." For the next hour, the pattern continued. Thomas provided friendly, professional service whenever he came through the cabin. Patricia continued to provide minimal cold service to Andre while being exceptionally attentive to other passengers. When Andre's water ran out, he pressed the call button again. This time, Patricia appeared almost immediately. "Yes?" she asked with the same irritated tone as before. "Could I get some more water, please?" Andre requested. "We're about to begin our descent. You'll have to wait." Andre noticed that she had just refreshed drinks for several other passengers. "I see. It looks like other passengers are still getting service, though." Patricia's expression hardened. "Look, we're very busy. If you're so thirsty, there's a water fountain by the economy restroom." Her voice was loud enough that several nearby passengers turned to look. The businessman across the aisle raised his eyebrows in surprise at her tone. Andre maintained his composure, but the businessman spoke up. "Hey, he just asked for water." "What's the problem?" Patricia flushed slightly. "There's no problem, sir. I'm just very busy right now." Thomas appeared from the galley, sensing the tension. "Everything okay here?" he asked, looking between Patricia and Andre. "This passenger keeps demanding special attention," Patricia said, gesturing toward Andre as if he weren't there. "I've told him we're beginning our descent and service is ending." Thomas looked confused. "We still have over 40 minutes before descent, Patricia." He turned to Andre. "What can I get for you, sir?" "Just some water, please," Andre replied calmly. "Right away," Thomas said, shooting a questioning look at Patricia before heading to the galley. Patricia remained standing there, her face flushed with embarrassment as more passengers turned to observe the interaction. The businessman across the aisle was now watching intently, his eyebrows raised. Thomas quickly returned with a bottle of water and placed it on Andre's tray. "Here you are, sir. Please let me know if you need anything else." "Thank you, Thomas," Andre said, making a point to read the man's name tag and make eye contact. As Thomas and Patricia moved back toward the galley, Andre could hear them having a whispered but heated conversation. Thomas gestured back toward the cabin with a concerned expression. The businessman across the aisle leaned toward Andre. That was completely unprofessional. "Are you going to report her?" Andre took a sip of his water. "We all have bad days," he replied diplomatically. The businessman looked surprised by Andre's response. "Well, I wouldn't be so understanding in your shoes." Andre smiled slightly. "Understanding costs nothing, but it can be worth a lot." As the plane prepared for its final approach to San Francisco, tension lingered in the first-class cabin. Patricia avoided making eye contact with Andre, while Thomas made a point of checking if he needed anything else before landing. Little did anyone know, this uncomfortable flight was about to become much more significant than a simple case of poor service. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their descent into San Francisco International Airport. Andre closed his laptop and stowed it in his bag, glancing out the window at the city sprawling below. The Golden Gate Bridge was visible in the distance, its distinctive red towers piercing through a thin layer of fog. Throughout the cabin, passengers began preparing for landing. The businessman across the aisle tucked away his financial reports, while an elderly couple toward the front held hands, the woman apparently nervous about landings. The atmosphere was calm, except for the lingering tension around Andre's seat. Patricia moved through the cabin for a final check, ensuring tray tables were up and seatbelts fastened. She methodically made her way down the aisle, smiling at each passenger, until she reached Andre. Her smile vanished, replaced by a curt nod as she verified his seatbelt was fastened without a word. The businessman across the aisle caught Andre's eye and shook his head slightly, clearly disapproving of Patricia's behavior. Andre gave a small shrug in response. After decades of success, he had developed thick skin. Still, he couldn't deny that such treatment still stung, especially in 2025 when one would hope for better. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway, taxiing toward the gate. Passengers began reaching for their belongings despite the seatbelt sign remaining illuminated, a universal airport ritual that transcended class and culture. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete stop and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, Thomas announced over the intercom, his voice pleasant but firm. As the plane docked at the gate and the seatbelt sign dinged off, the first-class cabin erupted into activity. Andre remained seated in no rush to join the inevitable crowding in the aisle. He pulled out his phone to check messages, finding several from his executive assistant about the conference arrangements. Patricia stood near the front of the first-class cabin, plastering on a smile as passengers began to disembark. "Thank you for flying with us today," she repeated mechanically to each passing passenger. Thomas, meanwhile, was helping an elderly passenger retrieve her carry-on from the overhead compartment. His genuine concern for the woman was evident in his careful movements and patient smile. The businessman across from Andre stood up, pulling his designer briefcase from under the seat. He glanced at Andre, then leaned closer. "That attendant's behavior toward you was completely unacceptable," he said in a low voice. "You should file a complaint." Andre nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for your concern. I'm considering how best to address it." The businessman handed Andre a business card. "Richard Thompson, Westlake Investments. If you need a witness, I saw everything." Andre accepted the card with a smile. "Andre Wilson, Tech Fusion." "I appreciate that, Richard." Richard's eyes widened in recognition. "Wait, Andre Wilson? The Andre Wilson? Creator of FinAssist and that new medical AI system?" Andre nodded modestly. "That's me. I had no idea." Richard shook his head in disbelief. "My firm has actually invested in your company. Your work is remarkable. Thank you. It's always nice to meet an investor," Andre replied with a genuine smile. Their conversation had caught the attention of nearby passengers, who were now glancing curiously in their direction. A young woman 2 rows ahead turned around, her expression shifting from curiosity to recognition. "Are you Andre Wilson?" she asked, her voice carrying through the cabin. "I used your healthcare AI program in my residency. It's changing everything about rural medicine." More heads turned. The quiet murmurs of Andre Wilson spread through the first-class cabin like ripples in a pond. Patricia, who had been chatting with a passenger near the exit, stopped mid-sentence and looked back toward the commotion. Andre acknowledged the young doctor with a friendly nod. "I'm glad it's been helpful. We're presenting the next version at the conference this weekend," another passenger chimed in. "My cousin's clinic in Arizona uses your system. They say it's added years to people's lives in areas without specialists." The atmosphere in the cabin shifted dramatically. What had been ordinary end-of-flight impatience transformed into an impromptu networking event centered around Andre. Passengers, who had been oblivious to his presence, now looked at him with newfound interest and respect. Patricia's expression changed from confusion to shock as she realized who Andre was. Her face paled visibly as she connected the dots. She had spent the past 5 hours treating one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country like an unwelcome intruder in first class. Thomas appeared by Andre's side, his professional demeanor momentarily slipping. "Mr. Wilson, it's an honor to have you on our flight. I've been following your work since you launched Tech Fusion. Thank you, Thomas. You've been very professional today, Andre replied, making sure his voice carried. The implied comparison wasn't lost on anyone in the cabin. Patricia stood frozen near the exit, her smile completely gone. Several passengers were now openly staring at her, some whispering to each other while shooting disapproving glances in her direction. As the aisle cleared, Andre stood to retrieve his carry-on. Richard clapped him on the shoulder. Let me guess, you're speaking at the Tech Forward conference this weekend? Keynote on Saturday, Andre confirmed. Are you attending? Wouldn't miss it, Richard replied. I'm moderating the venture capital panel on Friday. The flight's captain emerged from the cockpit, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a commanding presence. He shook hands with departing passengers, thanking them for flying with the airline. When he reached Andre, Thomas leaned over and whispered something in his ear. The captain's eyes widened. Mr. Wilson, what an honor, the captain said, extending his hand. I've been following your career for years. Your work on accessible technology for developing regions is inspiring. Thank you, Captain. That project is particularly close to my heart, Andre replied, shaking his hand firmly. By now, nearly every remaining passenger was watching the interaction. Patricia had moved toward the back of the plane, ostensibly arranging items in the galley, but clearly avoiding the situation. Her discomfort was palpable even from a distance. The captain chatted with Andre for another minute about Tech Fusion's latest innovations before excusing himself to complete his post-flight checks. Andre gathered his belongings and made his way toward the exit, nodding politely to fellow passengers who were now looking at him with undisguised interest and respect. As he approached the front of the plane, Patricia emerged from the galley. The timing made an encounter inevitable. She stood rigidly by the exit, her professional smile nowhere to be seen, replaced by an expression that mixed embarrassment with dawning horror. Thank you for flying with us today, she said mechanically. Unable to meet Andre's eyes, Andre paused. The cabin had grown quiet, with the remaining passengers and crew watching the interaction with undisguised interest. It was the perfect moment for righteous anger, for public humiliation, for making sure she never treated another passenger the way she had treated him. Thomas stood nearby, his expression sympathetic but cautious. The captain had paused his work, clearly aware of the tension. Even the ground crew waiting at the jet bridge seemed to sense that something significant was happening. Patricia's hands trembled slightly as she straightened some papers, clearly struggling to maintain her composure. Her name tag was slightly askew on her uniform. Andre noticed a family photo peeking out from her pocket. Patricia with 2 young children, all of them smiling. His perspective shifted slightly. Everyone had their struggles, their stories, their bad days. That didn't excuse her behavior, but it did complicate the simple narrative of villain and victim. The entire plane seemed to hold its breath, waiting for Andre's response. The businessman Richard stood watching from a few rows back, his expression suggesting he expected, perhaps even hoped for, a dramatic confrontation. The young doctor who had recognized Andre's medical AI had her phone out, as if anticipating something worth recording. Andre took a deep breath. In this moment, he held significant power. The power to devastate someone's career with a word. The power to create a viral moment of public shaming. The power to walk away and do nothing. Each choice would ripple outward in ways he couldn't fully predict. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. Power isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you can build. In the suspended moment before Andre spoke, countless possible futures hung in the balance. How he chose to handle this moment of tension would reveal more about his character than any biography or magazine profile ever could. The question wasn't just what Patricia deserved. It was what kind of world Andre wanted to help create. His next words would echo far beyond this plane, this flight. This moment of tension between 2 strangers whose paths had crossed at 35,000 feet. Andre stood before Patricia, aware of every eye on the plane watching them. The tension in the air was thick enough to touch. This was the moment everyone expected him to lash out, to demand her firing, to make a scene worthy of viral videos and news headlines. Billionaire destroys flight attendant who disrespected him. Instead, Andre smiled, not with malice or triumph, but with genuine warmth that reached his eyes. "Patricia," he said, his voice calm and measured, loud enough for those nearby to hear but not performatively loud. "I'd like to speak with you for a moment." Patricia's face flushed. Her hands trembled slightly as she nodded, clearly bracing for public humiliation. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "First, I want to thank you for getting us safely to San Francisco," Andre began, surprising everyone, including Patricia, whose eyes widened in confusion. "Flying is a tough job, especially when dealing with hundreds of different personalities every day." He paused, making sure his words were sinking in. The cabin remained silent, passengers straining to hear every word. "But I do need to address what happened during this flight," Andre continued, his tone shifting to something more serious but still remarkably free of anger. "I experienced what many people of color experience daily, assumptions based solely on appearance. You saw me and decided I didn't belong in first class." Patricia's eyes dropped to the floor. "Mr. Wilson, Andre raised his hand gently. "Please let me finish. This isn't about making you feel bad. This is about growth." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I'm giving the keynote speech this Saturday at the Tech Forward conference downtown. It's about how technology can bridge human divides. I'd like you to attend as my guest." Gasps rippled through the remaining passengers. Patricia stared at the card as if it might bite her. "But that's not all," Andre continued. "I'd like to invite you to participate in the panel discussion afterward. Share your perspective. Talk about this moment. What you were thinking, what assumptions were made. It could be incredibly valuable for everyone." Patricia finally looked up, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. "Why would you do that?" "After how I treated you," Andre's smile remained steady. "Because public shaming doesn't create change. Conversation does. Understanding does." He held the card out to her. "What do you say? Are you brave enough to turn this into something positive?" With a trembling hand, Patricia took the card. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Andre replied simply. "And then say you'll think about why today happened. That's all I ask." Richard Thompson, the businessman who had witnessed everything, stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, while I admire your restraint, don't you think there should be consequences?" "What she did was clearly discriminatory." Andre turned to him thoughtfully. "There will be consequences, Richard. Just not the kind you're thinking of." He turned back to Patricia. "I'll also be speaking with your airline's executive team next week. Not to demand your firing, but to propose a company-wide training program on unconscious bias, which I'm offering to fund personally." The captain, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, on behalf of the airline, I want to apologize for your experience today. Your proposal is more generous than we deserve." Thomas, the other flight attendant, nodded in agreement, clearly impressed by Andre's approach. Patricia finally found her voice. "Why aren't you angry? You should be furious with me." Andre considered this. "I was frustrated, certainly, but anger rarely builds anything worthwhile." He glanced at her pocket where the family photo was visible. "Those your kids?" Surprised, Patricia nodded. "My son and daughter. They're 8 and 6. What world do you want them to grow up in?" Andre asked gently. "One where mistakes lead to destruction or one where they lead to growth? I'm just trying to build the kind of world I want to see." A passenger near the front had been recording the interaction on her phone. She lowered it now, visibly moved. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have recorded without permission. I'll delete it." Andre shook his head. "Actually, if you're comfortable sharing that, it might help people. Sometimes we need to see better ways to handle conflict." By now, the remaining passengers were openly watching, some wiping away tears, others nodding in approval. Richard Thompson looked thoughtful, his earlier demand for punishment seemingly forgotten. "So," Andre said to Patricia, "Saturday at 2 p.m., will you be there?" Patricia took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "Yes," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I'll be there and—" "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Wilson," Andre nodded. "Then something good has already come from today." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Patricia shook it. As Andre finally exited the plane, passengers and crew alike watched him go with expressions ranging from admiration to disbelief. The story of what had just happened was already spreading, passenger to passenger, text to text. By the time Andre reached the terminal, several people were looking at him with recognition, having already heard about the incident from friends on the plane. Richard caught up with Andre at the baggage claim. "That was unexpected," he said. "Most people in your position would have demanded her job." Andre shrugged. What would that have accomplished? One person loses their livelihood, becomes more bitter, and nothing changes except now her kids suffer too. He paused. I've been on the receiving end of that kind of treatment my whole life. Firing one flight attendant won't fix the problem. You're a better man than most, Richard said, extending his hand again. Not better, Andre replied, shaking it. Just tired of the cycle. Someone has to break it. Outside the airport, as Andre waited for his driver, he checked his phone. The video was already online, spreading rapidly across social media platforms. The comments section was filled with surprised reactions. I was ready for him to destroy her, but this was so much more powerful. This is how you use privilege and power for good. I'm crying watching this. Why can't more people respond this way? Andre's phone rang. It was David, his assistant. Boss, have you seen what's happening online? A video of you on a plane is going viral. The hashtag or Andre Wilson response is trending. Andre smiled. That was fast. News outlets are calling for interviews. What should I tell them? Andre thought for a moment. Tell them I'll give one interview, a joint one with Patricia after Saturday's conference. He paused. And David, call the airline's CEO. I want to discuss that training program as soon as possible. On it, David replied. Oh, and your grandmother called. She says she saw the video and she's proud of you. That meant more to Andre than all the viral fame in the world. Tell her I'll call her tonight. As his car pulled up, Andre took one last look at his phone. The video had over 1 million views already. He put the phone away and took a deep breath. He hadn't planned to make a statement today, but sometimes the most powerful messages weren't planned at all. His driver opened the door. Good flight, Mr. Wilson. Andre smiled. Actually, it might have been the most important flight I've ever taken. In the terminal behind him, Patricia sat alone in the crew lounge staring at Andre's business card. Her phone was blowing up with notifications, friends and family who had somehow already seen the video. Her supervisor had called twice. She should have been terrified for her job, for her reputation. Instead, she felt something unexpected, hope. The card in her hand wasn't just an invitation to a conference. It was an invitation to be better, to grow, to change. For the first time all day, Patricia smiled. Saturday at 2 p.m., she would be there, ready to take the first step on a new path. One opened up by the very man she had wronged. Sometimes the most significant journeys began with the most uncomfortable moments. This journey, for both Andre and Patricia, was just beginning. Saturday arrived bright and clear in San Francisco. The Tech Forward conference was in full swing at the downtown convention center. With thousands of attendees moving between sessions on artificial intelligence, blockchain innovations, and the future of global healthcare, the main hall was packed for the 2 p.m. keynote, with people standing along the walls and sitting in the aisles. On stage, the conference organizer approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, a man who needs little introduction, founder and CEO of TechFusion, creator of life-changing technologies that have improved healthcare access for millions worldwide, and as many of you have seen this week, a remarkable example of grace under pressure. Please welcome Andre Wilson. The audience erupted in applause as Andre walked onto the stage, dressed in a simple charcoal suit with no tie. He carried no notes, no flashy presentation remote, just a quiet confidence that immediately commanded attention. Thank you, he began, waiting for the applause to die down. I was planning to talk exclusively about technology today, about our new AI healthcare system and how it's helping rural communities. And we'll get to that. He paused, looking around the packed hall. But first I want to talk about something more fundamental, how we see each other. In the front row, Richard Thompson nodded encouragingly. Beside him sat Thomas, the flight attendant who had treated Andre with respect on the plane. Thomas had reached out after the video went viral, asking if he could attend. 3 days ago, I had an experience that many of you have seen online, Andre continued. I was judged not by my character or abilities, but by appearances. It's a story that's painfully familiar to too many of us. The audience was utterly silent, hanging on every word. But what happened next matters more than what happened first, Andre said, because how we respond to moments of division determines whether we widen the gap or begin to bridge it. Andre's gaze moved to the back of the room, where Patricia stood nervously near the entrance. She wore a simple blue dress rather than her flight uniform, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked uncomfortable but determined, clutching the conference badge Andre had arranged for her. "I'd like to invite someone to join me on stage," Andre said. "Someone who taught me as much as I hope I taught her. Patricia Reynolds, would you please come up?" A murmur rippled through the crowd as people turned to look. Some recognized her from the video. Patricia took a deep breath and began walking down the center aisle toward the stage. Some audience members looked surprised, others confused. A few even appeared angry on Andre's behalf. As Patricia reached the stage, Andre extended his hand to help her up the stairs. He gave her a reassuring smile and turned back to the audience. For those who don't know, Patricia was the flight attendant in that viral video, Andre explained. And she's here today not as an example of what's wrong with the world, but as a partner in showing what's possible when we choose a different path. Patricia stood nervously beside him, facing the thousands of watching eyes. Andre gestured to a second microphone that had been set up. "Would you like to say something, Patricia?" he asked gently. Patricia nodded and stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "I've been a flight attendant for 11 years, she began, her voice barely above a whisper before she cleared her throat and found her strength. "I've always prided myself on being professional and treating everyone with respect." She paused, blinking back tears. "But 3 days ago I failed at that completely. I made assumptions about Mr. Wilson based solely on how he looked, not on who he was. I provided him with second-rate service that was unprofessional and, yes, discriminatory." The audience remained silent, watching this unexpected confession. "What happened next shocked me," Patricia continued. "Instead of demanding I be fired, which he had every right to do, Mr. Wilson offered me understanding. He offered me growth. He's even funding a company-wide training program on unconscious bias for all airline staff." She turned to Andre. "I've learned more in these 3 days than in years before. Thank you for seeing me as someone who could do better, not just someone who did wrong." The applause began slowly, then built to a thunderous level. Not just for Andre now, but for Patricia too, for her courage in facing thousands of people and owning her mistake. Andre returned to his microphone. "This is why I asked Patricia to join me today. Because courage comes in many forms. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. It takes courage to change. And we need that courage now more than ever." He walked to the center of the stage. "The technology I'm about to show you can connect doctors to patients thousands of miles away. It can diagnose diseases with remarkable accuracy, but technology alone can't heal our deepest divides. Only human connection can do that." For the next 45 minutes, Andre delivered his planned presentation on TechFusion's healthcare innovations. But the audience knew they were witnessing something much more powerful than a typical keynote. They were seeing a living demonstration of the change Andre advocated for. When the presentation ended, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. As Andre and Patricia left the stage together, a reporter approached them. "Mr. Wilson, can we get that joint interview you promised?" Andre looked to Patricia, who nodded. "Yes," he said. "We're ready." The interview aired nationally the following evening. Patricia spoke candidly about confronting her own biases, while Andre discussed the overwhelming response to the video, which had now been viewed over 50 million times and sparked conversations in workplaces, schools, and homes across the country. "The real measure of success won't be views or likes," Andre said during the interview. "It will be whether this moment helps someone choose understanding over anger the next time they face a situation like ours." 1 month later, Andre stood before 200 airline employees at their corporate headquarters, conducting the first session of the bias training program he had funded. Patricia was now a co-presenter, sharing her experience and helping others recognize their own blind spots. "This isn't about making people feel guilty," she told her colleagues. "It's about making us all more aware, about seeing each other more clearly." After the session, Andre checked his phone to find a message from his grandmother. She had sent a link to a news story about a similar incident on another airline, where a passenger had referenced doing an Andre Wilson when faced with discrimination, choosing education over humiliation. "You're changing things, one heart at a time," his grandmother had written. "Just like I always knew you would." Andre smiled as he typed his response. "We all are? Nana. One conversation at a time." 6 months later, Patricia was promoted to a new position, Director of Customer Experience Training. Her first initiative was extending the bias awareness program to all customer-facing staff across the airline's global operation. The video of their plane encounter remained online, continuing to inspire millions. But more importantly, it had sparked something that couldn't be measured in views or shares. A ripple effect of people choosing understanding over division, conversation over condemnation. As Andre often said in the many talks he now gave on the subject, the most powerful technology we'll ever create is the choice to see each other's humanity, even in our most difficult moments. It was a simple truth that had turned an uncomfortable flight into a movement that was changing lives, one conversation at a time.